Welcome everybody to the second nienteForte concert streaming event, virtual event for season 11. I'm here with Roberta Michel. Sorry, did I say that? I didn't even ask you how to pronounce your last name. Was that correct? Sweet. Feel free to hop on the chat if you have anything in particular that you want to say and give some love. Also, last time when we did this, actually in the first part of this, we couldn't hear Megan because of some technical issues. So thankfully the chat gave me a lot of information to kind of say, hey, we can't hear Megan, we can't hear Megan. So if there's any issues with being able to hear Roberta or hearing me or any of the concert material, then feel free to yell at me in the chat, and I'll do my best to try to get that to go. Before I start and hand this over to introduce Roberta more completely, I wanted to make sure that I give a shout out to our sponsors. We are sponsored by the National Performance Network, the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, the Tulane University School of Liberal Arts, and the Tulane University Newcomb Department of Music. In addition to that, we have had some great donors that have contributed to Season 11, specifically Hannah Banghart and her parents, Lynn and John Banghart, and my parents, actually, Bert and Joyce Lee, and also the Liang Family Charity Foundation. If you're interested in supporting us, feel free to check out nienteForte.com for information about how you can support us, either through donations or just being a part of a fan, just supporting these artists that we're trying to bring to this virtual concert situation, especially in this past year with COVID being such a big global event. This allows us, and being able to find an avenue that allows us to still bring performances to the people that are fans of it and are really passionate about it. It's very important to me, and also something that I'm glad to be able to support through all of this. So spread the love, make sure that you like and subscribe to all of our stuff on social media, and share the stuff that's out there, and let's spread the joy of new music to everywhere and anywhere that we can possibly get it. With that said, I'd like to introduce Roberta. She holds a Bachelor of Music with the highest honors from the University of Colorado at Boulder, Master of Music from New York Purchase College, SUNY Purchase College, and a doctorate from the City University of New York Graduate Center. She's currently teaching at St. Francis and Sarah Lawrence College. I want to hand it over to her and say, welcome, Roberta, for you coming here and being a part of our broadcast and being a part of our concert this year. Ooh, hold on one second. It is correct that right now we're not hearing you, so give me 1 second to change. Give me one quick second. I just have to change one setting here. All right, try that now.
All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you now double, which is a product of what happens on this, so I imagine that everybody else is good. But let me check the chat window and just make sure. I don't know, we'll see. Like, go ahead and start talking again, and if people still can't hear you, then we'll do our best to try to deal with it. So.
Okay, well, hopefully this works. Hello, everyone. I want to say big thank you to Mendel and Max and the nienteForte series for having me play. It's been such a pleasure to get to play a lot of music these days. That's something that's not very frequent, or at least as much as I would like. So I super appreciate the chance to get to share some music and have a live event with an audience. That's one of the things that I miss more than anything these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what got you down the pathway of new music specifically. Like, I imagine that wasn't the first thing that you started off with flute, but what got you passionate about new music and decided to really get into that?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I was really excited about becoming an orchestral flutist, and that seemed like the most exciting path forward. And then I started hearing some new different sounds. And then when I went to Purchase College, my teacher, Tara Helen O'Connor, who's like flute god, put me in the contemporary ensemble, and I started playing a lot with percussion and other instruments. And I was sort of fascinated by percussionists, by what they do on their instruments, and that they could just make sound out of anything. And I realized I could do a lot more of that on my flute and make a lot more interesting sounds and weird sounds and beautiful, eerie, strange sounds than I ever thought I could before. And then I got hooked and started learning lots of different pieces. And I then went to study with Robert Dick, who quite literally wrote the book on extended techniques for the flute. And got in with that and started playing with a lot of new music chamber ensembles, and that I just never looked back.
That's awesome. Do you find that between the time when you first started to get excited about it and started getting passionate about it versus now, that there's been any kind of evolution or change in the way that in what you're being asked to do, or a change in like the new music scene at all, or?
I think yes and no. I think composers have always been trying to like explore different sounds and see what they can try out and see, but I think the sort of expectation that musicians are able to do it is higher because there are more of us who are more versed in this music and see different notation and say, oh yeah, that's just another score I have to learn, versus seeing something new and being like, oh my God, I don't know what what this is or what to do with it. And it's more just part of daily life. And I think at least in New York, there might be a little bit of a bubble that I'm in around that, where it seems like there's such a vibrant new music scene. And there has been really since I've lived here, that just seems like it just keeps flourishing, and new composers and younger composers have interesting new things to say all the time.
Sure. And in that scene then, specifically New York, because I know that it is vibrant, I think is a word that I would definitely use for the new music scene up there. What would you say about how the new music scene, specifically New York, has responded to COVID-19 and the stuff that's kind of happened in this past year?
So number one, I think just musicians everywhere are pretty devastated, right? The field and our careers are in many ways put on hold, especially financially. Those of us who have some teaching are in a much safer, more secure position that way. But in terms of creativity, I think one of the things that new music really relies on, or for me at least in my my little world of it, is chamber music and getting to have really close interactions with other musicians, and also just really close interactions with other composers, inviting them over and workshopping, and just having that back and forth and actually being in each other's physical presence is so important. But I think even within that, there's been a lot of creativity and a lot of sort of new ways of working together, and I think people have been exploring more solo projects and smaller things, and I know I have a lot of friends who are tackling some really hard music that they haven't had a chance to ever get to learn before, or trying to, do other projects. And I find myself doing a lot more improvisation as I'm working, and just finding different outlets and avenues. I find myself playing piano a lot more so I can hear more chords, as much as multiphonics are fun on the flute. But, it's this summer there were a lot of outdoor concerts, and sort of I did a recording session in Prospect Park. I did a really great project with my group Wayfield, where we gathered in a parking garage, and it was this actually quite beautiful parking garage, and because it was open on three sides, it was much safer, much more ventilation, but still had the sound of a space. So we commissioned a few pieces to be written there, and actually one of the pieces we had written is written by Jessie Cox, a composer I'm playing this evening as well. And we just had like one read down of each piece, and then we recorded it, which is a weird way to rehearse and record. but it was a new way of sort of thinking about how to play music and how to play music with others.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something about the interactivity of new music, and that's something that Megan and I talked a little bit in the pre-concert talk for the first concert. This idea, because especially for those that aren't familiar with working with like new music performers and also with composers, this idea that compositions are a lot more interactive and a lot more conversational between the performers and the composers, as opposed to taking music and just kind of seeing it as just directions on the page, and the performers having a lot more being a lot more part of the creative process and also kind of the interpretation of it along with the composer. And that's something that I think is what is very unique and the most community aspect of new music that really draws me to it. Like, even though everybody has their preferences of what they love and what they hate, like pieces that they love or pieces that they hate within new music, because the vocabulary of new music is so vast. But I think that amongst that vastness, there's just this sense of community and unity around the idea of it really being an interactive and collaborative kind of experience, and I think that that's really great.
Yeah, exactly. And as much as I love to have composers have their own autonomy with the piece and have their ideas come forth, it's wonderful to have that interaction and workshop and say like, hey, I know your music and I've played it before and you know my playing style, and let's create a piece together. And then you just hang out and figure things out, and you get to know each other musically as well as personally, and that really informs some of the best interactions I've had with composers.
Absolutely. I'll take that opportunity to say a little bit about this program specifically. Like, I don't know if there's anything that you want to try to talk about with the 4 pieces that you're going to be not performing live, but presenting for this concert. Like, what if there's anything in particular that you want to try to dive into with the 4 pieces, either individually or the program as a whole?
Yeah, I was thinking about the program as a whole, and I don't think I was thinking about this so much when I was putting things together, but I think the 4 pieces have a lot to do with sort of my headspace in this past year and sort of where I've been at, and each one in a different way sort of explores, some sort of idea of either separateness or togetherness, and different ways of dealing with the self in either interacting with others or how you sort of talk to yourself in various ways. So it's kind of interesting that way. The program starts out with Max Dulaney, who's also at Tulane, piece In Mormorio and Sussurro, A Murmur, a Whisper, and that piece has this sort of sighing chromatic figure which becomes very microtonal and goes back and forth between that and this poco sospeso, or this very suspended sound, which is something that we've all been feeling a lot these days, this sort of suspension of all time, right? And sort of the interaction of those two things. And then the next piece, Anahita Abbasi, she's a composer that I've worked with before through Wayfield. Her piece, No, I Am Not Roaming Aimlessly, and yes, we are a little bit all roaming aimlessly, right? Deals with dialogical self-theory, and I'll talk more about that piece when we get to that piece, but it's a lot of sort of one's talking to oneself through the poetry of Rumi, and dealing with how we sort of interact in dialogue between ourselves and others. And you'll hear me shouting a little bit in that one and speaking, and somehow even in my New York apartment with everybody home all the time, my neighbors have not killed me yet or knocked on the or checked to see if I should be in an insane asylum for that one yet.
From just repeating like the same things like over and over
shouting
again.
The same things over and over again, yeah. And then Jessie Cox's piece Spiritus, I was initially drawn to this piece because it feels very meditative. It has to do a lot with breathing in and out, and the sort of inhale and exhale, and has these long drones and chords that are created with my voice and the flute, and then go back and forth between that and these little microtonal outbursts, which for me, in my head, somehow I sort of think about them as these little Gregorian chant outbursts, but they really don't sound like that at all. That's just how I think of them.
Well, I'd say that with that, it's definitely kind of in, even though it doesn't sound like that, it's within the same, if I could say, like spiritual kind of realm. Like the idea of the piece is supposed to be in that same sort of, as you say, like meditative and reflective kind of space that I think is very akin to the stuff that you would get out of those early chant kind of works. And I find that it's a pretty great piece of work.
I'm glad you heard that. Yeah, it sort of explores the Taoist philosophy that one's physical self is an important part of one's spiritual self, right? So that the breath can inform the spiritual. And as flutists, that's what we do, right? Is we breathe, and having that be that sort of meditation in and out is really, really special, I think. And the piece ends, or the program ends with Jane Rigler's Red, and I absolutely adore this piece. It's really wonderful, and I think Jane is an amazing composer, musician, improviser, and also just such a wonderful, kind soul that I met her pretty soon after I moved to New York, and she's just such a great, smart, wise human. And in this piece, Red, it deals with the color red and how we perceive what the different meanings of red can be, right? Red could be luck, it could be violence, it could be wine, it could be blood, and all of these things. And in Spanish, RED means net or network. And that's, and we get in this piece, it's this sort of continuous, very continuous. There's very little room for, as you'll see, it's sort of this whirlwind of circular breathing for about like 5 or so minutes. That you get this network between different patterns and how we relate the different patterns in themselves that almost come out sounding like Morse code and little like secret codes coming through in the music. So we get these sort of repetitive patterns, and again, sort of when thinking about, you know, life recently, it's like just small variations in tiny patterns every time in our quarantine lifestyle. And you hear this sort of change and fluctuation within that as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, like, when I think about like when I was kind of going through the editing process of presenting the materials, I want to say that Jane's piece, the first word that came to mind when I thought about it was athletic. It's just a very athletic piece to perform and to listen to, and there's something that's very exciting about it just because of the kind of energy that it has. And it reminds me a little bit of, I always go back to a colleague of mine, Ray Evanoff, who we have very different kind of, I have a very different kind of idea about composition and than he does, but not so much that I disagree with it, but just a kind of a different kind of sensibility. And one of the things that he likes to think about when it comes to his composition and what he's trying to achieve is he's a big sports guy too, and how everybody likes to, like, will focus on like those greatest moments in the NFL, like that impossible pass or that impossible throw or things like that really makes somebody stand out as like a superstar athlete. And that he thinks about his music in very similar ways as really wanting to be that outstanding and low probability kind of athletic kind of event. And to me, Jane's piece is very in that kind of vein. Like it's something that I think that not a lot of people can pull off, even with a lot of practice, but it's something that for the people that do, it has to be so gratifying to be able to perform it and know that you've accomplished and performed it really well, and then gratifying for everybody else to be able to see what that piece can actually do and perform that. And it's to me, it's pretty outstanding in that way.
Yeah, she actually says that it should be a dizzying, euphoric experience. So hopefully it's euphoric and dizzying for the performer as well as the audience, right? And you get sort of caught up in this sort of whirlwind of trills and tremolos. And I didn't know that about Ray Evanoff. That makes a lot of sense. I really like his music, and the idea of thinking about it as a very athletic experience. Yeah,
absolutely. So, cool. Is there anything else in particular that you wanted to say about the program or the pieces?
I'm not off the top of my head. I think I just hope that everyone really enjoys it, and it was such a pleasure to get to put this music together and be performing again, for sure.
Sure, absolutely. I'll say that for those that are tuning in to the YouTube stuff, the program order and the stuff that she's going to be doing is listed in the description. Throughout the concert, if you have stuff that you want to ask questions of, at the very end of the concert itself, we are going to have a brief Q&A where we talk with Roberta, and also Max Dulaney is going to come in, the composer of the first work, and my colleague at nienteForte. He's going to come in at the very end too. So if you have any questions that you have for either Roberta or Max or myself, then feel free to throw them into the chat. We probably won't take the time to answer them during the actual concert itself, but we will address any questions that you might have at the very end. So feel free to interact with us and give reactions to the work. I'll be keeping the live chat here, and I'll report anything that's particularly that's great, because it's always fun to kind of get those interactions and make sure that everybody is aware of that stuff. So,
and we'll be talking a little bit more about the pieces as we go through the concert.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to it. The concert itself, we're going to take a quick break right now, about 10 minutes. We'll start the concert material at around 7 o'clock Central. So stay tuned here, and we'll see you back here pretty soon. Thanks all. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Roberta Michel, a flute player from New York. We're going to be presenting 4 works this evening. Before I start off with that, I want to reiterate just how important it is that that nienteForte has been able to move forward thanks to our sponsors, the National Performance Network, the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, the Tulane University School of Liberal Arts, and the Newcomb Department of Music. I also want to make sure that you are aware that if you have any questions, we are going to be having a Q&A at the very end of this. And one of the composers of the first work, Maxwell Dulaney, who is also my colleague with nienteForte, is going to be joining us for that. So if you have any questions, then feel free to pop them into the chat. We won't answer them during the concert itself, but I'll go through and I'll collect all of them and find them for us to answer at the very end during that Q&A session. If you've got questions for Roberta or for Max or for myself or about nienteForte, then feel free to throw it out there. Also, before we start, I wanted to make sure that I do a quick plug. A sister ensemble in New Orleans that's also into contemporary music called Versapel New Music. They're going to be doing a concert tomorrow night as a live stream as well. Information on that is on their Facebook page. If you just look for Versapel New Music, then please join that concert as well. That's tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. And the next event that we have as a part of nienteForte is going to be at the end of March, featuring clarinetist Carlos Cordero. And I'm pretty excited about that one as well. So without further ado, we're back here with Roberta Michel, and yeah, let's talk about this concert. We're going to go through these 4 pieces, so why don't you just take this first one here and just talk about it and introduce it. I do have the scores up for some of them. We'll talk about at least Spiritus, but if you want to have any of those scores kind of up there to talk about it, then feel free to tell me to do that, but clearly also not required to do that. But so let's talk about Max's piece.
Great, so I don't want to give too much away since Max will be speaking about his own piece later on.
We'll make him do that anyway.
Yeah, we'll make him do lots of talking. he can write a poem right now in the meantime about the piece.
He's going to be doing work. I can imagine him scribbling like a whole bunch of stuff down right now just to prep for to be able to talk about it after.
But his piece, In Mormorio un Sussurro, for solo flute, was not written for me. Was written for Orlando Sala in 2018, I believe. And I recorded it for Max a couple years ago. We did a quick little recording project of the piece, and it's these very quick, rapid scales going down in the very bottom part of the flute, and it starts off with a very sort of regular, normal sort of chromatic scale, and it gets more microtonal. So you're doing things where you're having to put your fingers just on half holes and change around and figure out different fingerings for all of the notes that are there. And it goes back and forth between that and then exploring this very poco sospeso, this really suspended sound that really investigates a lot of different timbres with flutter tonguing and airy, breathy sounds, and starting to add multiphonics or playing multiple notes on the flute at once and adding sort of more layers and more layers to the sound. So it's sort of this back and forth between those two things. And as we get to the end of the piece, the multiphonics and the more timbral stuff takes over a little bit more. And in the beginning, we'll hear more of the sort of busy things in the sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, with that context, let's throw the piece on. I hope you enjoy Max's work here. All right, we are back. Great performance. We'll get an opportunity to talk with Max about that piece at the very end of the concert. So again, if you have any questions, then feel free to throw them into the chat. Let's move on to the next piece that's on this concert from Anahita. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, Anahita Abbasi. She's a composer who is currently at UCSD right now. So she's in California time. And this piece, No, I Am Not Roaming Aimlessly, it was written in 2017. And I met Anahita through working with Wavefield. She wrote a piece that we played in which it was also kind of theatrical in a way. We had to play leaf bouquets. By the way, thanks for the shout out to my plants. So I actually went and gathered and harvested some leaf bouquets from parks in Brooklyn, and we used those to make sounds as well as many other sort of beautiful sounds. But I'm going to just read her program notes from this piece because I think they're a really great way of describing what's going on here.
Sure.
So she says, No, I Am Not Roaming Aimlessly is based on two ideologies, dialogical self-theory and Sufism. Dialogical self-theory weaves two concepts, self and dialogue, together in such a way that a more profound understanding of the interconnection of self and society is achieved. Usually the concept of self refers to something internal, something that takes place within the mind of the individual person, while dialogue is typically associated with something external. The composite concept dialogical self goes beyond the self-other dichotomy by infusing the external to the internal, and in reverse to introduce the internal into the external. As functioning as a, quote, society of mind, the self is populated by multiplicity of self-positions that have the possibility to entertain dialogical relationships with each other. The form and the context of this dialogue is inspired and shaped based off of a poem by Rumi, translation by Farah Aziz, and the sincere definition of Sufism. The search for the center, for the inner state of mystical love, a deeper identity or essential self, and the unity of being. Sufism is the selfless experience and actualization of the truth, which involves an enlightened inner being, not intellectual proof, revelation and witnessing, not logic. The practice of Sufism is the intention to go towards the truth by means of love and devotion. The truth of Sufism requires reformulation and fresh expression in every age. The Sufi is one who is a lover of truth, who is eager and persistent, and by means of love and devotion moves towards the truth, clarity, and the perfection which we are all seeking. So in this piece, you'll hear me reciting or speaking sort of wildly to myself a little bit this poem by Rumi, as well as throwing in some other sort of words that maybe I don't know you hear me shouting out. And there are some other directions that are a little more theatrical. And there are lots of sounds in this piece that are really interesting. One of my favorites is she does a combination sound of a covered flutter, a note that you cover the embouchure and then go, and then combines that with a fluttered whistle tone, and there's this really interesting connection between those two sounds and how she weaves those two together. So
very cool. Sweet. Let's give this a listen. And a watch too, actually. I guess it's a video and
a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Especially with this piece. not possible. It's not possible. No, I am not roaming the streets aimlessly, around the streets and bazaar. I am a lover, searching for her beloved. God, have mercy on me. It's not possible. I'm walking around troubled. I have done wrong and sinned, and I'm walking around wounded. I am not. I'm not. Aimlessly. Aimlessly? Aimlessly. Not roaming. I am walking around troubled, and am walking around wounded. I have drunk the wine of desire, the wine of desire. God, have mercy on me. It's not possible. It's not possible. God, it's not possible. I have drunk the wine of desire, and am strolling around, beloved. Though I may seem drunk, I am quite sober. It's not possible. Really, it's not possible. It's not possible. Really, it's not possible. God. It's not possible. Really? Oh, God. It's not possible. It's not possible.
And we're back. We did get a couple of comments that are just basically putting out applause things that kind of look like, to me from far away, they kind of look like turkeys. But no, absolutely great performance, wonderful stuff. Why don't we shift on a little bit more to Jessie's piece here, Spiritus. I'm going to put up the score here, just because I thought that this would be a good opportunity. Just to give people that aren't familiar with new music an idea of what the notation looked like and how that translates to performance, and also maybe talk a little bit about some of the extended techniques that some people might not be aware of. So let me throw the score up here. You're not going to see this, but I'm going to try to throw on... let me see if I can figure this out here. There we go. Right now we're taking a look at, I have this on the screen now, and right now we're taking a look at the first page of the score. So I don't know if there's anything, I mean, I want to basically go through like the first page, second page, and third page a little bit, especially with the multiphonics and the notation around that happens on the third page. But if you could just talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you see here and like how that translates to performance, and then also in the greater breadth of the work.
Yeah, for sure. So in this piece, it's a lot of my voice and the flute and those two interacting together. So what Jessie does is he creates one line for my voice and one line for my flute, which is a really common way to do it in sort of new music notation, where the vocal part is pretty busy, or not busy, but has a very prominent role. So here you see the different syllables that I sing. So the U is basically me singing ooh, and then it goes to ah, yeah, and it just changes the syllables. So I see which syllables I'm supposed to be singing, and then the vocal part versus the flute part when those two are playing in terms of time. And then each measure is basically a length of time here. So Jessie specifies instead of count 4 beats, it's around 10 seconds, and then around 10 seconds, and that sort of changes. So instead of having sort of more intricate meter changes and having like 7/4 and 10/4 and 3, it's just you're sort of counting and breathing in time, which really works for this piece, right? This sort of inhale, exhale, very natural sort of sound. And then you see these little semicircle U's, and that's how my flute gets rolled in or rolled out as well. So there's an indication for the physicality of that, going back and forth between ordinary, which is just holding your flute in a normal way, to rolling in, rolling out. And then for the part that has the sort of busy notes on that second line, so that's just all sort of ordinary flute playing, but with some microtones. So throwing in, different adjustments of the pitch. So it's higher or lower than what you would see or what you would hear from a piano. Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting that you're showing the score for this one, because I've, during the pandemic, have played two other different pieces of Jessie's. And the scores for those are both very different as well. For one piece, Space Travel from Someplace Else, which is one of the pieces we recorded in the parking garage, it was basically just a page of directions. Mm-hmm. And then we had to watch a video score and sort of recreate our own score based on the video score. And then the other piece, Black as a Hack for Cyborgification, which he wrote for a group I play with called Pink Noise. It's a series of many different what he called one-sheets, or basically graphic scores that we would read the imagery and the notation on there, and then sort of going back and forth between other transition material and using other scores. So it was much more of a sort of journey from one place to the next and back again. So Spiritus, the one that you guys are seeing up on the screen, is sort of the most straightforward of his scores that I've ever seen.
Sure, and it looks, for me, for the most part, I don't know a whole lot about everything here, but it definitely looks like the most straightforward to me. But I know that for some people that are more traditional music people, that this is a kind of a foreign thing to view and take a look at. I want to shift a little bit to some of the stuff in page 3, I think. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, just like on that first system of page 3, there's that big thing at the very top, which is the multiphonic kind of stuff. And if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it looks like a big, huge sound, but it only goes up to pianissimo to very quiet, right? So it's in this, Jessie gives you the fingering to play. So I use my left-hand thumb, second, third finger, first finger, and I put my pinky in the C-sharp key. And then out of this comes hopefully all of these notes, or some of these notes. It depends sort of on your specific instrument, as well as what you're trying to achieve with the dynamics and all of that. So, and a lot of these multiphonics, you're sort of going in and out of the different harmonics that are in the piece, so the different notes that you hear in the multiphonics. So you'll hear some sort of wavering, and not just one huge block of sound.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, I guess I could mention, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be misremembering this, but at the very beginning of the program notes, like amongst like the very, very detailed stuff about the multiphonics that he has in the page, he says something about how overall that the individual pitches are not necessarily the most important as much as the textures that it kind of creates a little bit more. Can you talk a little bit about that? About the feeling about the piece, and like what the conveyance of the piece as it relates to this notation is really about?
So that's actually, I think, really important to this piece, that it's the resultant timbres, right? And not exactly executing all of the pitches and the sung pitches, where, hopefully you'll get as close to all of the right sung pitches, and all of the resultant timbres will work with that. But it's more about creating the atmosphere and the colors, right? I was playing this for Jessie, and he gave me, I think, maybe one of the best quotes about my flute playing I've ever heard from anyone. He said that my voice became a spaceship inside the flute with this piece, and I was like, can I put that in my bio?
That's a great quote. Like, you don't get quotes like that.
But that's sort of, I think, the idea of this piece, right? That the voice is like going and traveling inside of the flute and going to this weird other realm which is a place that we are at, but is also a portal to somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I think it really lends itself to helping to create, like, the notation, like the care of which he kind of went about dealing with the notation and the multiphonics and what he wanted to hear and how that's realized. It really comes through in your performance. So congratulations on that. Absolutely. Cool. Let's give this a listen. And here's Jessie's piece. Enjoy. And we are back again. Sweet. Let me do a quick setup here. We're going to go into the final piece that we have on this concert. I'll again say I don't have any questions coming in through the chat right now, so I think that maybe we're just going to make Max talk the whole time, and he'll close ourselves out. But I'll say again, if you have any questions in particular for either Roberta or Max or myself, then please feel free to put those into the chat. I'll give Roberta the opportunity to introduce our last piece here. She does want me to throw in the score, and I'm trying to set that up a little bit. So before I throw that in there, then why don't you talk a little bit about the piece first?
Yeah, so Jane Rigler, great flutist, composer, improviser, new musician. She teaches flute at University of Colorado Springs. Wrote this piece, Red, for solo piccolo for herself to play, and I am lucky enough that she wrote it down, and I can play it too. So, like I said in the before the concert started, so red in English, right? It's a vibrant color, right, and can mean many different things: blood, wine, danger, violence, the devil, love. You know, all of these different juxtapositions of different things. And in Spanish, red means network or net, or red, sorry, means network or red. And we get this sort of dizzying network and net of sounds going back and forth. So throughout this piece, it's notated in a way, but it's really meant for the performer to sort of create their own piece with. So, like, based on the fingering patterns provided.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that up on the screen now, actually.
Oh, great. So within that, Jane is asking the player to sort of create your own piece, right? And it can be anywhere between 4 and 7 minutes long, and it uses these different finger patterns, which you have to get really familiar with. And basically, that's a diagram of my fingers on the piccolo. So this is for piccolo, not for flute. And the X's are the fingers that I wiggle. And which seems very simple, but the wiggling just never stops and is very fast. And so it goes back and forth between the different patterns, and you sort of mutate and change and create these little extra patterns on top, these little like Morse code little shout outs in there using these different patterns that she says. And it starts off with just key clicks, so just like barely any sound at all, and goes into breath and then finally into sound, and then it's just this nonstop circular breathing journey for a ways to go.
I think that the first time that I watched it, when I was doing the editing of it, I didn't quite understand. I couldn't tell that you were breathing at all. Like, it was just one of those things where I just kind of felt like this has to be like a post-process effect or something, and it's just not actually doing anything. And then I realized like what was going on after the fact. It's very, as I said, it's such a marathon piece, and it's quite something. So
yeah, the breaths are not edited out. They're they're just contained within the music.
Awesome, and it's a great concert closer. So I hope everybody enjoys this performance of Red. All right, we're back again, and yeah, as I said, and hopefully everybody could hear that piece is very athletic, and it's a great way to close out this concert. So, thanks again, Roberta, for being a part of this whole thing. It's a pleasure to be able to work with you and to get your material and to have you be involved with nienteForte.
It was such a pleasure to get to be part of this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I've got some comments here. Serious shredding. Seriously breathtaking. Dig that. And absolutely rocking. That's cool. Sweet. Aww. So thanks again. Show a little bit of love. If you can stick around, I'm going to put on the transition screen just a little bit so we can get Max into this Zoom call and do any Q&A. I still don't have any questions here, and even after Max said, please, people ask some questions. So I think Max is going to end up talking a whole lot.
Come on, give him the third degree.
Absolutely. So give us a moment here to get Max into this call and to set up the new Zoom for this, and if you've got questions, then or you just want to hear Max talk a whole lot, because we're going to make him talk a whole lot, then feel free to stick around post-concert here. So see you here in just a minute. And we are back. Joining us for the tail end of this and the post Q&A thing is Max Dulaney, artistic director of nienteForte and also the composer of the first work that Roberta performed for us. And before we get into it and give him a chance to talk about something, I want to say again, thanks to everybody who tuned into the concert. There is more new music that's happening in New Orleans. Tomorrow, Versapil New Music is going to be putting on a live stream concert. You can go to their Facebook page to see the time and the YouTube link or whatever link that they have in for that. That's going to be tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. And the next event for nienteForte is we're going to be bringing in clarinetist extraordinaire Carlos Cordiero at the end of March. I want to say March 25th, actually. Whatever that Thursday is in the last week of March, we're going to be doing a concert just like this, except with him. So please come back and tune in for that. Look on our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter for notifications of all that. I'm additionally also going to be releasing the videos that you saw for the concert tonight on nienteForte's YouTube channel over the next week or so as well. So you can revisit and re-love what Roberta did for these excellent performances. I also do want to do a quick shout out to the recording studio that she did this in, which was Shoal Street Recording.
Street Studio, yeah.
Shoal Street Studio that did the recording, the video recording and the audio recording of that space. So shout out to that, and thanks very much for Pierre, is that his name?
Renee.
Renee for the work that you did for that stuff. So Max, welcome to our chat.
Hey.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the piece that you wrote for solo flute here?
Well, I was, let's see. First of all, she mentioned that I wrote it for Orlando Sala, and Roberta's discussion about compositional process and collaboration, and being participating in the compositional process, and how integral that is to her sort of life experience with new music, reminded me of one of the main things that's important about that piece, which is that I wrote it for Orlando Sala, who I met when I first moved up to Boston back in 2003, and he conducted one of my first pieces, and then we built up. We developed a friendship. He's just a really great human being, and then he started. We worked really closely on a big flute piece that I wrote like a year later, which sort of was one of those pieces that sort of changed my way of thinking about composition, and I think part of it was being able to get so deep inside the flute, and really explore all the parameters of the flute, and just how outgoing so many important performers are in working with us and helping us improve our voice and our craft. You get really lucky if you find someone like Roberta or Orlando, or these people who are willing to put forth that effort. And as composers, we can't be more fortunate when that happens. So he did that, and then it's just been kind of one of those things. Like when I moved to New Orleans, he was in China, and he was like, write a piece for this ensemble I'm conducting. So I did, and then I went to China, and then he put on some concerts for me there, and then he was doing a Pacific Northwest tour, and he wanted a sort of encore-ish sort of piece, and I needed to write something, and I did. I was like, Felix had been born the year before. I was sort of sweating tenure. I just couldn't get any work done. It was just all of those things. And then he was like, you can write me a piece. And I was like, oh, would be
in
great.
all of your spare time.
Well, no, but it gave me a very small window within which I had to work, and it forced me to and it gave me that drive to sort of get out of to find the time. And it was hard to find the time, and then I found the time, and then it was very rewarding just to kind of limit myself to these sort of musical objects again, as Roberta described. And so that, it was actually another little groundbreaking moment for me in my life, just because I was having so much trouble finding time to write, and that's gonna pretty much be my existence until I get these 18 or 19 or something. No, but
see, like, it's not tenure.
I do have tenure now, so it's kind of whatever. No, but and then what was great was that Roberta really, was gracious enough to learn the piece and record it for me, because I didn't have a recording for tenure. So there, it's like not a very interesting story, but it's like really important, the effort and the sincerity with which she did that for me, and it meant a lot. And it's great that she's revisited this piece again for this concert, because it's it's under her fingers now, and she's I feel like she's playing it even better, and she's and it's fun to watch a piece grow with the interpretation. So
it's nice to get to let it sit and live with it for a while.
Yeah. And then revisit it, and then I have to rethink what I was thinking, and then it's like
no more changes.
I was actually gonna ask about that a little bit, about whether the piece that she performed for this concert is the same as the piece that she did before, or that Orlando did before, or if there was something that about the piece that you felt didn't quite live to what you wrote at the time, and you felt like you wanted to try to revise and solidify the voice a little bit, and is that still true, or are you really happy with where it is now, or what's your feeling about that, or just what's your process with that?
Nope. I made some tweaks with Roberta actually back in 2009. What was that?
19 maybe? 18, 19?
18, summer of 18 maybe. Yeah, summer.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we made some technical edits, some fingering adjustments and some things that I didn't get to review with Orlando. He made some adjustments on his own as well, because I think just some of my fingerings I just put in the wrong fingering, like I copy paste the wrong thing.
I think flute multiphonic fingerings are complicated.
And then you just fingers crossed that the multiphonic works, but usually the flutist comes up with 25% of them are at least different,
right.
Which is fine. Or, you make an adjustment on the multiphonic, like it sounds better. I'm a little more comfortable with just like changing something on the spot. If like a player and a player's flute can make that multiphonic, but maybe with a slightly different sonority, maybe the fundamental's different or something, and it would be really nice. There is that aspect of when working with multiphonics of sort of you're sort of in a liminal space between whether it's going to work or not with some of them, and I like being in that space, and that works really well for this piece. So I picked some multiphonics that do kind of like move, and sometimes they are sounding together, but sometimes it forces one note or the other to sort of pop out, so you get this sort of undulating back and forth between those things, which I thought ended up being really effective for what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
actually,
absolutely.
One of the pieces that I haven't really revised heavily.
I hear you. And I always like getting those kinds of things where you're kind of embracing that degree of what would normally be considered like imperfections, or when you come across those kind of accidental discoveries that kind of gives the piece a little bit more of that color or that kind of pop that I think is very important when it comes to, especially when you're writing a piece that is so focused on timbre and texture. It's like you want to embrace those kinds of things and experiment and see how much you can push the bounds of that, of how your vocabulary can express what you really want, and then make decisions around that. And I think that's very important for that kind of piece, and as well as the other pieces that were on the program as well.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to Roberta, is just magnificent playing.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks,
when I was lucky to meet Roberta in 2016 because I had Etche come. We had Etche come. Remember? So like that was when I got to meet Roberta, and that was just a really lucky, magical experience. And when she played some of Chirino's La Opera, it was like,
yeah, well, it was great to meet both of you and down there.
And it's wonderful when the relationship continues. It kind of goes back to the conversation about new music. It's like we're a very small group of people within the world, and it's hard, when you live in different towns. Luckily now with, social media, it's easier to keep up with people, but it's nice to keep relationships going and develop friendships out of work.
Absolutely. I was talking about this like during the broadcast of the actual works. I was talking about that a little bit with Roberta. That the idea of just like the nice thing about these concerts, like live concerts, but even these kind of events, is how much it really energizes me in composition and in the community. It kind of just being surrounded by people that are just as passionate as you are in a field that you care about so deeply just helps to inspire me and makes me want to go out and write a lot more music and just kind of make that more connections, put on more concerts, like do all those kind of things. And we were talking a little bit about the pros and the cons and the differences between this kind of event, where the virtual event that we've kind of developed for nienteForte versus the live concerts. And there is something that's really nice about particularly like if Arthur is still here in this chat, like last concert for Megan, it was nice to have all of the composers except for the one that lived in Australia, so it was like freaking 3 a.m. for her or whatever, but have all the composers be able to be a part of a virtual concert in a way that would just not be logistically practical for all of the composers to be at a live concert. And that's something that's really nice about this medium, and also the idea that Roberta can record, or any of our performers can record like their best take of something, and then just feel free to, like, you don't have those live stage nerves, and just feel free to just kind of portray the best version of the piece that they potentially can within a recording situation is really great too. But on the flip side, there's still no substitute for live performance, and just being able to be in the same space all together and getting that sort of energetic and interactive and spontaneous kind of energy, both within the concert itself and the communication you have with the audience, but also just the after concert hang and the kind of things that just the intangibles of what we do this for, which is really about creating connections between people and connections with the music, which I think is very important.
It's mixed between like going out in New Orleans for a cocktail afterwards and the actual like artistic interaction.
Yeah, right.
Both equally as valid. Yeah, it's also nice though because there are people in like very distant parts of the country or the world that can see concerts and that they wouldn't have access to, or people in rural places that wouldn't be able to get to concerts can actually access a lot more concerts and other content that just wasn't around for them.
Yeah, for sure.
It's made me think a little bit about that. This is the first piece I've had played since before time. So,
Yeah, totally.
And then I finished another piece this summer, but again, this year's been a hard year for being creative as well, as for many people probably. Some people are having more success than others, and we have to kind of be kind to ourselves and remember that we're just trying to make it through. It was very gratifying to have a piece played, and it was like, but fewer butterflies. But I miss a lot of that social aspect of it, but like maybe that's something that we're learning. Like, what can we take from this cloistered experience of ours, this like life alone, and how we're all reaching out and we're trying our best to kind of give decent quality and also still get, part of the job of nienteForte is to help get money to people who are performing, like,
Absolutely.
Like help, and then also obviously to get the work out to others, so that they can hear it. And that makes me think that, like, what are the things we're going to continue doing after the fact?
Absolutely.
Like, how can we incorporate some of the digital technology aspects of it, and the while still having an actual concert? Because streaming a concert isn't like the best method. Like this seems to be the best method in terms of getting audio quality. So maybe there's like a post, like kind of what you're doing with our, where a lot of people are like loading premieres up on their Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, instead of even bothering with it, they're just putting up the premiere and then promoting it that way. And then you can maybe watch the live event, but it's pre-recorded, and then it's still there, and like, maybe that's something we all start incorporating into our concert programming.
I've been thinking about that too, about the idea of like there is something that's nice about this kind of thing, and I think that there's a lot that can be leveraged with doing this in this digital realm in the way that we've come up with here, in marriage with the live concerts as well, and that's something I definitely want to continue to explore in nienteForte's future, because more exposure and being able to promote that sort of things for our performers, and also just new music in general, and whatever we can do to kind of spread that and get more people inspired in new music, and in our mission to champion contemporary music, specifically in New Orleans too. I think that all those tools are there for us, and we can continue to use them regardless of whether we're in a pandemic or not. So there is one question in that now has come up specifically for Max, from Nicholas DeMason, a very important question, he says, which is, what post-concert cocktail would you be having right now if we were all watching this live together?
Oh, I know my answer, but this is for Max, so
Well, what's your answer too? Like, I want to hear.
We'll go with Max first.
Sure.
You New Orleans.
Like, what would I be having right now?
Yeah. If we were out in a bar, if we were out at wherever our local, like our greatest ale or something like that in New Orleans, like what would you be having right now?
If I was at a craft beer place, I'd have like an Imperial IPA, but I'd also maybe have a bourbon neat.
Cool. What about you, Roberta?
So if I were in New Orleans, and if we did go to the best beer place, I would probably take your recommendations, but I would make sure to have a Vieux Carré, which is one of my favorite cocktails. And if I'm going to New Orleans, I might as well.
Absolutely.
A friend of ours turned us on to the Paper Plains. It's another bourbon drink. Really, you should try it. I think it's called Paper Plains. I'll have to ask her.
Paper Plains. I need the recipe for that.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too.
Yummy. It's like it's lemon and bourbon and some sugar.
Oh, got you. Okay. I mean, I'm a traditionalist that way. I like my bourbon pretty much just on the rocks, and
yeah,
you don't need anything else.
I hope that works for Nick and he's taking notes.
I guess we don't have any other questions. Although Arthur is saying that if he was out right now, he would definitely be getting a whiskey. He's doing red wine right now, and he's also porter or stout. Okay, so I have to say, Arthur, that when I was living out in Oregon, I got into the stouts because of McMenamins, because of the Terminator. Like that was a stout that I ended up loving even more than Guinness. But then since I've moved away from there, I've actually strayed away from doing anything that strong. Like I've turned totally into like a pale ale kind of person, or just kind of just a golden beer drinker anymore. Like that other stuff is too heavy for me anymore.
Well, when you live in Oregon, you need a little bit more like warmth, and the dark beer will
get you through the fog.
I guess I'd like to be able to close this out. I know that Roberta, we did talk about this a little bit, but I thought I'd try to throw this out to the rest of the chat to just kind of talk a little bit about what the scene is like in New York right now, like in the COVID scene, and also just kind of generally about it. And if you were to talk about it as a struggle, and just to kind of speak about what the scene is like there, but also because, as you said, you want to be optimistic, like what you think that the New York scene is going to be like, and optimism for what's going to happen in the near future.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a struggle right now, and not much is happening. There are a few things where people are like recording live streams or doing some live concerts, so there are a few live events that way, and as the weather gets nicer, hopefully there'll be more outdoor things that are safer to do. I did a couple outdoor concerts in the fall, and a couple of recording things along the way, but everyone's been sort of doing different things, and we're sort of all in our sort of disjunct spaces right now. But there's a lot of sort of planning for the future and hoping that we can have real concerts again and gather without hurting people, especially like as a flute player, and I'm sure singers too feel this, like we're kind of the most dangerous amongst the musicians right now. So trying to think about how I can responsibly play for people is something that's really important. But I think if we can get things under the control with the vaccine and etc., we might be able to have some concerts in the fall. And we're sort of in Wayfield at least thinking about like, I think maybe we can try to program some things and hope that, keep our fingers crossed. And we actually have a project with Max coming up as well for that. But I think a lot of people are sort of hoping and getting the wheels turning that the fall will be another world yet again.
Yeah, I hear that, and hopefully that's the case.
Hey, you have your harmonica right there. Hey,
mini,
nice. Woo.
Cool. Well, hopefully that'll be the case. It is something. Like even though there's a part of me that has to be cautious about it, and say that I don't necessarily think that the fall, like for me in my day job dealing with a marching band, like I kind of don't expect that the marching band operations are going to be back to normal, really. But and that's just kind of my cautious kind of tale. But I think that as opposed to it really being pessimistic, I think that I still am ultimately an optimist in that regardless, at least for me and for the stuff that I'm trying to do, that regardless of where we are in this pandemic in the fall, or if it's later or not, that I've been really inspired by how much adaptation to those things that we have been able to pull off at all. Like for the marching band, we had no idea if we were going to be able to do anything, and we developed a program that still allowed us to have performances that could be put online, and we did end up being able to be in the stadium like fanless and perform for the football team and still establish that relationship. For these concerts, being able to do the virtual thing and again, still being able to pay the performers that definitely need that income when all those gigs have dried up, like that sort of stuff. And I'm seeing some of that stuff happening elsewhere too, throughout the country and even across the globe. And just knowing that people are invested in trying to make sure that we can keep this kind of industry alive, and that we'll continue to adapt and do the best that we can with that. I think that to me breaks through a pessimistic attitude that, oh yeah, maybe a year from now we still have to be virtual, but regardless of that, I think that we'll still end up persevering. So hopefully sooner than later that will be in a live context, but even if it's not, we'll figure it out. And nienteForte is still going to put on a season 12 regardless if it's going to be all virtual or if it's going to be like in person. And I'm pretty excited about all that. I'm excited to put my own voice out there with my own music and other people's amazing music as we continue with this stuff moving forward.
Great. Yeah, I think the adaptability of musicians is something that's been around for a long time, right? We all have to figure out how to pay rent and eat and make art. And I think we're going to continue to try and keep on figuring that out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let me see if there's anything else that's here. I don't think so. So I think we'll just close this.
I wanted to just thank Jessie and Jane and Anahita for the great pieces.
Absolutely.
Thanks for writing them. And Roberta, thanks so much for playing.
And thank you for writing a piece too. I'm lucky to get to work with such lovely composers all the time.
Well, touche, right?
Absolutely.
No.
Cool. Well,
we couldn't do it without the likes of you. So
absolutely, that's true. So thanks again for everybody that tuned in to this concert. Again, look for the videos that are going to be coming out on our YouTube channel. Please tune in to that live stream concert that Versapel New Music is putting on tomorrow at 8 p.m. Go to their Facebook page for that information. Tune into our next concert that's going to be happening at the end of March with Carlos. And I don't know, follow the people. If you liked any of the work that Roberta's done, make sure that you follow her and see what she's doing. And if you're interested in any of the composers, go out, support all of the new music that you're kind of witnessing here or at any of the other concerts that we put on. The most important thing that we can do as a whole community is just to spread and share alike and make sure that we all keep in this thing together. So thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again in the near future.
Mendel, thanks for all the wizardry with the stuff, man, because the season wouldn't happen without you.
Of course. It's my pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
See you guys all next
Thanks.
time.